Hey guys, I'm Chalena,
And I'm Courtney.
and this is Mysteries at the Coffee Shop. So today we are going to go over some Laotian folklore and myths. We're going to go over some ghosts. Most of this information comes from a man named Brian Thalwara. He is a Laotian author and poet, so we're just going to take a look at all this information. We got a handful of things here. And then once we get through all of this, we're going to do like a get to know your podcaster interview. And of course, we're going to do an episode like this with Courtney as well, going over like some myths and things about her culture, which I'm really excited about, honestly. I know some people don't really like going into the Bible and religion, but personally, I think it's really interesting. I think it's really nice to know about other cultures, which is why we're doing this. Courtney and I do love culturally sharing things and learning new things, so this is why we're doing this episode. With that being said, let's get into it. The first one I want to go over are the were-tigers.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like werewolves, but they're a little bit cooler. They're called Sia Saming, and Sia means tiger in Laos. And for all you Laotian folk, I am so sorry if I'm not pronouncing anything right. I fluently understand Laos, but speaking it is a little bit different. I have a white person tongue. I was born and raised in Georgia, so I'm so sorry for pronouncing everything wrong. So the interesting thing about were-tigers is that every story has a variant, and this is actually prominent all over Asia. So you have your variant in China, you have your variant in India, you even have your variant in like Malaysia and everything. Like anywhere that has tigers, they have a version of this. But I suppose, like, tigers are essentially their version of wolves, just like in Europe and stuff. According to legend, they have their own ways of transformation, and it's not dictated by the phases of the moon. So they start out as tigers, and the more humans that they consume, the more human-like they can be. So a full-fledged were-tiger that can transform between tiger and human, that's a tiger that's eaten a shit ton of people.
Oh no.
And that's the scary part about them, is they start out as animals. In some different villages, there's different versions. So some of them say that they actually have the ability to also turn into inanimate objects, such as like jewelry on the side of the road. I don't know, a bottle or a beautiful bathing woman. They just disguise themselves to trick humans into coming closer. So I just have a theory that because, you know, tigers are critically endangered, the Southeast Asian tiger is. My theory is that, like, you would think that tigers would have to adapt in order to survive. They're an endangered species, and what seems like a nightmare to us is not a problem for them because we have no qualms with killing them for their teeth, their pelts, or fur. So they're like, I don't see the problem with eating people and, like, you know, becoming one of them because we're top of the food chain, right?
Right.
It offers them security and stuff. So it's just really interesting to hear about this. Out there, a lot of people do get eaten by tigers.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, but at the same time, like, homie, they fucking live there. Like, we just kind of, like, went in there and was like,
Yeah.
hey, we live here now. And they're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and I feel like they're on their predatory animal instinct of surviving.
Yeah, that's the thing. They're doing what they were meant to do, which is surviving. And like, you look at a person and it's just like, yeah, that's pretty easy to trick and eat, which is unfortunately very true. So my next one is the ghost horse, and I actually didn't find a lot of information about this one. This is my first time hearing about it, but it's called Pi Ma Bong. So Pi means ghost, monster, Ma means horse in Laos. So the majority of the ghosts in Laos and Thailand are said to be shapeshifters. However, this one is just a ghost mostly shaped like a horse and sometimes has the face of a young woman. It doesn't like people at all. And their favorite activities are chasing you up and down the road when you try to hide from them and then trampling you to death.
Oh no.
Yes, they love raw, rotting meat and raw eggs. And then some stories suggest they don't like were-tigers, and it's unlikely to be helpful to any humans at all.
Oh wow, so the two lords kind of coincide there.
Yeah, they're like, we don't like
Oh,
were-tigers, but I'm assuming it's because were-tigers can, like, turn into people and it doesn't like people.
I like that they, like, coincide and, like, have overlapping, like,
Right, right. There's actually a lot of overlapping lores here, but for this ghost horse, I honestly, I just wrote it's just a angry motherfucker that hates everyone. Honestly, just sounds like a regular pissed off horse to me.
Same. They're angry little things, both big things.
Yeah, and I like that they were like, oh, it loves eating rotting meat and raw eggs because out in the wild, there is a phenomenon where horses and other creatures like cows, herbivores, bovines, whatever, deer, they will they'll go and they'll just eat birds. They'll just suck them up and eat birds, and then they'll eat like the leftover bones and rotting meat of other animals. It has been seen.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting concept. They do it when they don't have enough calcium in their bodies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're not complete herbivores.
Right.
It's an interesting thing to look up if you want to look it up, but they do that.
Absolutely.
So part of me just thinks that this is just one fucking angry horse that just hates everyone.
But it needs calcium.
It needs calcium, and also fuck you. So the next one is going to be the floating head ghost. It's called Pi Kai Su, and actually the floating head ghost is pretty prominent all throughout every part of Asia. And honestly, I heard about this the first time through Japanese lore, which is a little bit different than this one. So in Japanese lore, the floating head ghost, like, this head is attached to the body of a woman, and it still is attached to the woman but floats around and like gets its victims, right? The way to kill the floating head ghost is to find the body and like kill that. But this is Laos, so this is a little bit different. They are said to, this is really gross, their heads are floating but often with their viscera and entrails attached to them. So there's no body. It's like a floating head that has like all the organs attached still. And their favorite snack are going to be pregnant women and gullible young boys.
I did not expect that.
And the way that they lure them in is they kind of float behind a wall so that only their heads are visible, so you'll see their pretty face. And then you turn the corner around the wall and then you're like, oh, fuck. Now, in rural villages where they've been a problem, they actually can kind of be stopped or like slowed down by hanging up vines and stuff because they really don't like it when their guts and their intestines get stuck on the thorns and stuff.
That's fair. I don't think I'd be a fan of that either.
No. I don't have my internal organs like put out in the open, but like even with just my regular skin, I do not like being touched by thorns and shit. Like it's not pleasant.
No.
They've also been said to feast on excrement on dirty laundry hanging outside, and it's best not to disturb them when that happens. Don't ask me why that is. If you just see them munching on those dirty panties, you just walk away.
Just walk away.
Just leave. Just fucking leave. Like, honestly, if some dude came into my yard, like, it doesn't even have to be a ghost. If someone came into my yard and was eating my dirty pants, I would just walk. I don't know how to respond to that situation.
Walk away. Just
how do you respond to that?
Leave them be. Just go inside and lock the door.
It's just like, how do you respond to that at all? You don't. You don't. You do exactly that.
Yeah.
So this floating head ghost is almost always a nocturnal female spirit. And like I said, there's variations, but they said that the woman is believed to be an individual who she's engaged in various sins in her previous lifetime. So when she died, her sins have caused her to be reborn as a monster, and her punishment is to live off of wasted, rotten, or unwanted food, which, again, they try to eat like people, young men and children, but they end up like eating the excrement off of dirty laundry. That's supposedly their punishment. And the other variations other than this one and the one in Japan is that it's a woman who has a black ribbon around her neck that was cursed by a kaisia, and a woman trying to learn black magic who's been reborn, or a woman who has aborted or killed someone. You'll find that a lot of these spirits and ghosts that they have rely heavily on the thought of reincarnation.
Right.
So this ghost is supposedly a woman who is paying for her sins. You are doomed to float around as a head with your entrails inside out, and unfortunately, just eat what is there to be left.
Wow.
And what's crazy to me is that, like, it's not just in Laos. Like, this is seen all over Asia. So part of me is, like, a little bit scared about that, because it's just, like,
Yeah.
not one village, not one country saw this. This is, like, the whole of the continent. Plus the country that's not even attached by land.
Yeah, that makes you think, like, what are these guys seeing, you know?
Exactly. That's the scary part. So this one is, like, in everybody, like you hear about it a lot. It's in, like, almost everybody's culture. Isn't that crazy?
That's very crazy. That makes you think, like, it's just, like so spread out and still, like, kind of the same. Like, what are these dudes seeing? What is going on?
So we'll move on to the next one. So the next one is the one that I actually was scared of as a child. And it's not because my mom told me stories or anything, but it's because when I was younger, I loved to watch documentaries, and I saw one on the Travel Channel about this Buddhist hell garden in Bangkok, Thailand. So the Buddhist hell garden is essentially like a bunch of statues that are depicting Buddhist hell. And this particular being was actually inside there as statues. And it kind of stuck with me. Yeah, it kind of stuck with me. So imagine you're walking out at night, right? And then you see this really, like, 7-foot tall skeletal being with a mouth the size of a grain of rice. Its belly is inflated, however, its skin is mummified and it is skeletal.
Very scary.
So these are known as pipit, or preta is what the English variation is called, but we call them pipit. So it is also known as the hungry ghost of Laos, and it is enriched deeply into the Buddhist legends and the fate of those who cannot overcome their greater hunger. So if you were a greedy, gluttonous person in your past life, this is what you are going to be doomed to be in the afterlife. These beings are said to wander the earth, perpetually hungry and never being able to get their fill. Which is why their bellies are hollow and their mouths are smaller than a grain of rice. They can never work off their karma or debts that they've incurred in the living life. And it's one of the most tragic fates to happen to a person in my religion.
Wow. I really like how a lot of these are centered around, like, what you did in your life. Like, that makes it very real and very scary to me. Like,
doesn't it?
Especially this one.
The thing about this one is that they aren't really creatures to be scared of, because, like, it's not like they're going to eat you. Like, their mouths are the size of a grain of rice.
Right.
They're creatures that are said to be pitied. And a lot of Laotian and Thai traditions have you leaving out food for them, to be honest. It does. And, like, I remember, like, at the temple, you know, we would leave out, like, food and stuff for the tree spirits, like balls of rice and anything that, like, just we would leave out food. And it's part of the tradition. Like, you know, they're said to be pitied. And what makes it worse is, like, a lot of the tales say that before they can even eat the food, it catches on fire, or before they can eat the food gets rotten.
Wow.
Because they were greedy and gluttonous in their past life, there's always, like, an object that they desire. And for whatever reason, the object of their hunger is something disgusting like feces.
Wow.
And they are highly sensitive to the cold and the heat, and this is just the life that they're doomed to have just because of their sins that they can't ever pay back in the past life. So, I mean, I guess you just have to be a really piece of shit person to be reborn as that, but they're just said to be pitied.
Wow. I think it's really beautiful that y'all leave out food at the temple for the tree spirits and everything. I think that's really cool. But I think it's very sad that I think that the mummified 7-foot tall skeletal men are, and it's really sad. Like, I get that they're, you know, paying for their past sins, but, like, it's almost really pity. Like, you feel a lot of pity for them.
Honestly, yeah, because, like, it's not like once they turn into that, they get a chance to repay their debt. Like, their debt is never going to repay. That's just how they are now. So, like,
it's just the rest.
Yeah. That it's just, like, it is what it is, and, like, you just feel bad. And you know, if you're, you know, you follow Buddhist religion and stuff, it's just, you try to be kind to everything that you can.
Right. I like that.
Now, this next one is one that my uncle constantly tells me about all the time. Like, since I've started this podcast, he's wanted me to cover this. I couldn't find a whole lot of information online about this one, but this one is supposedly the one that scares the absolute shit out of him. So I do have a story to go with this one, right?
Yep.
When my uncle was younger, he went out to his family's house a little further down in the village, right? And his mom was like, hey, you need to come home before it gets dark. Like, you don't want to be walking out in the dark. This is like a small village in Laos. There's no street lamps. You're walking through straight darkness. So him and his brother are like, like 10, 9 years old, whatever. They're holding hands, walking back home from the party, thinking it's going to be a good night. And then they hear this clicking sound. And like this gives them the spooks a little bit. So they like kind of put a little pep in their step and start walking faster. And then out of the corner of their eye, they see like this old woman who has one leg and is holding a cane. And she just kind of stares at them and cocks their head. And they're like, okay, that's really creepy. This scares the living shit out of them. So they start to walk a little bit faster. And so they just hear, like, he described it as a sound almost like a clicking, but she goes, koi, koi, koi. And they're like, oh, that's really creepy. And it sounds really close to them. So they're like, okay, we need to walk a little bit faster, like faster than we're already walking. So they keep going, right? And then she starts making the clicking sound a little bit faster. So instead of her saying it one word at a time, it's koi, 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 koi. And the sound sounds farther away. And then that's when my uncle realizes, oh shit. The sound being closer to them meant that she was further away. But the sound sounding farther away from them meant that she was actually closer.
Oh my gosh.
And so they fucking just hightail it home as fast as they can. And my uncle said that he has never been scared in his life. And he swear to God that every time he looked back, she was there. He was like, I don't know how the fuck she was running with one goddamn leg, but she was running.
Yes.
And so that is my uncle's story of Pi Gong Koi, which is also known as the grandmother ghost. So these terrifying ghosts are jungle ghosts. They're said to be short and ugly and have skin that is black or gray. And they have red eyes and one leg. And that foot faces backwards to fool anyone stupid enough to try to track it.
That is terrible.
And so they repeatedly tell their victims that they're hungry by shouting, goi, 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 as they approach.
Oh my gosh. Ugh.
So the unsuspecting fool who's like, let me help this old lady, you're gonna get freaking eaten.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I love that you have a family story of it. Like, oh my gosh, I saw her, but like, I'm like, it's cool that you have like a first-hand story.
Oh, yeah. It was like my favorite thing. There's also a bunch of other stories I have that we'll go over after this. But this ghost, another piece of information about this ghost, I just thought it was funny. I don't know why. It's not. It has been known to suck the blood from toes of travelers. It is recommended that they sleep with their feet together or crossed.
Oh,
I don't know why that's the method of sucking blood from travelers.
Yeah, that's strange.
It is very feared in the village, which if you ask my family, they'll tell you all about it. They're like, you avoid that one. You stay away from that one. Do not walk at night. Do not make eye contact. You need to run if you see this one.
Wow.
This one is a little bit scary, and like no one really knows the origins. So this grandmother ghost is actually also seen throughout Asia.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, so like everyone's seeing something, right?
Yeah, that is so scary, man.
It's pretty scary. Now, this is all I have for today because unfortunately, like I can't read fluent Laos. Just because they are completely different. Like, we don't use the ABCs, homie. They're completely different letterings and stuff. So I would get more information if I could go on Reddit and read Laos, but unfortunately I cannot.
Yeah.
And Google Translate is not sufficient enough.
No, not reliable.
No, not at all. So this is about all the information that I can get. And I really do love these stories because, like, they do center around, the sins that you've done in your past lifetime. And I think that is so, so interesting.
It is. I agree. Like, it's different than, like, like, up here we have, like, Bigfoot, and in your culture you have, like, it's almost like life lessons that, like, these people are paying for what they've done, like being greedy or being a bad person, like they're paying for them. So there's like a really deep meaning behind the lore.
And then, like, of course, like there are a couple others that my family has mentioned that I haven't been able to find, like the banana tree ghost. My dad mentions that one all the time, and it's just like this really scary woman who's like hanging on to a banana tree. Wow. I don't know what she does, but she hangs on to that banana tree. He never went into further detail, but he's like, she's real scary, and it's like, okay, what does she do other than hang in the banana tree?
That's funny.
He's never told me.
My favorite ones are the ones that are seen all throughout Asia. I think those are the ones that are probably the scariest, since they're so widespread, and like not just like, it's different when 2 people are seeing it and they pass it down, and it's different when like thousands of people are seeing it, like recording the same thing.
Oh yeah, because it's just like, then it's not just like a village phenomenon. This is like, everybody is seeing something. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Another ghost that my grandmother mentioned is like, there's a ghost that likes to lick the salt off of your big toe.
What is up with toes, man?
I don't know. I asked my grandma that, and she was like, bruh, I don't know. They just like, they like them toes.
Wow, that's so crazy. I almost makes you think, like, maybe one time, like, long ago, toes were significant for something.
Okay, so, like, this is literally the reason why, if you see me sleep, I have to tuck my feet in the blanket, because it's not like a ghost is gonna grab them. I'd prefer to be grabbed, okay? Don't lick my damn toes. That's so...
Yeah, I think I'd be more scared to wake up with someone's, like, licking my toes.
How do you respond to that? Like, so if something grabs my ankle and drags me, I know how to respond to that, but I don't know how to respond to something licking my toes. Like, do I just ignore them? Excuse me. Why are you doing that?
That's funny.
Well, like, what do you do after they address? Do they just look at you and, like, continue to lick your toes while making eye contact?
Depends on, like, hit something in the face, but...
Oh, yeah, I just like the awkwardness. So, like, I don't even, like, bother not covering my toes. I just cover my toes in fear of that awkward interaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe that's not the correct response, but I am a very awkward person. So, like...
Me too. Gotta know that with you.
Right? So, that is it for the story part. And if you want to skip this next part, you can, but we're going to go into the get to know your podcaster part. Which is what I really want to do. So Courtney has set aside some questions for me that she can answer. And what questions do you have for me?
Yeah, you know that I respect and love learning about your language. That's like my favorite thing. Definitely, what was it like having immigrant parents? That's I think that's one of the most interesting things about you and your culture and what I know about you.
Oh yeah, so I know I don't mention my childhood with my immigrant parents a lot, but it was actually really hard. It was really hard, actually. I never really saw them. Like, I remember a part of my childhood where I did spend some time with them, but I was very, very young. But most of the time, my parents spent their time working, so I never saw them, and I was, at home with my grandmother all the time, but that's the ideology when people come over to America, is that they can work really hard and achieve their dreams. But I just remember in childhood them working so hard and us still not having food in the fridge. Mm-hmm. And I know, like, in school and stuff, they go over this whole part about the American dream. And I remember, like, not making really good grades on that. They're like, that's not the American dream. And I'm like, bullshit, it's not the American dream. Like, I wrote an essay that was like, the American dream is bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. Because, like, my parents came over, they escaped a war, they came over to America, and yes, they did get better opportunities, but only for them to continue living in poverty with them working as hard as they did and never seeing their children. And
right,
it's hard when they're always working, because then, Like they're not emotionally available to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of left to my own devices. Not that my grandmother didn't love me, she did, but she was doing the best that she could with how she learned to raise children, like back in Laos, which is a little bit different than in the US. And I also
Absolutely.
It kind of stunk. And like, of course, like, I'm not mad at my parents. I was when I was younger, but I'm not mad at them now. Like, I understand being an adult now what they were going through. I do want to say that I am honestly really proud of them for coming as far as they have, just because, like, you know, back then explaining to them, like, I am hurt, you guys are emotionally unavailable, I don't know how to talk to you. Like, they didn't understand it. They're like, what is there to be sad about? I don't understand. It's not like you had to escape a war, you had to do this and you had to do that. They had to learn a lot. And I was there for that. And like, slowly watching my dad understand that, like, yeah, he wasn't there. Yeah, he was emotionally unavailable, and he like admits that he was wrong. Like, I think that takes a lot of guts, and I'm like really proud of him. Like, because it did suck, but now, like, he's completely understanding about my mental health. And, like, the thing with, like, a lot of Asian families is that, like, they are emotionally unavailable. Like, they don't know how to address their feelings. And it took my family a really long time to do that. And, like, but when you think about it, like, when do you have time to be emotionally available and to learn about your emotions when you're going through all of that?
Absolutely. Like, you look at it from, like, them being probably young at the time as well, and coming over, and like, it's a like cultural shock, I'm assuming, as well. Like, things are lots very different. So they're learning all new things while, you know, doing the best they can with kids. So yeah, I definitely applaud your parents as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, they lived through war, dude. That wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. And so it's really easy to look at a person and not forgive them, but I totally forgive them. Like, they were growing with us, and that, like, I think that's the thing that children don't understand about their parents and parenthood is, like, you don't understand what they're going through until you become older and go through it too. Because, like, it's why I don't have kids right now, because I was like, I'm not going to be emotionally available to them. I'm not ready. Like, I'm still trying to sort my life out with my parents. Like, I wasn't planned. I was definitely an accident, but yeah, growing up with immigrant parents, it's not easy, but you know, I think my family has worked really hard on our relationships, and like, my dad and my mom actually have worked really, really hard on understanding like what it was like for me. Even though I didn't go through all the trauma that they did, I still went through some trauma, and they completely understand that, and I'm really appreciative of that, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have any other questions?
Definitely. So, you know, one of my favorite thing about your cultures is your food. I got to try some food from your culture, and it is amazing. So I guess our viewers would probably want to know what your like staple food or favorite food from your childhood like was.
Oh my God, there's so many, and it's so good too. Like, I can't.
Yes, it is.
I can't deny it. So, there is saikok, which is like the Laotian or Thai sausage. It is probably the best damn sausage you will ever have in your life. Like, Quinn and I go to the Asian store, and like, we get the pre-made ones, but it does not ever taste as good as the ones that your grandmother will make. Okay? Like, my grandma will hand make these sausages, and I swear to God, we will fight over these sausages. We will fight so hard over them.
You have such a diverse, like, beautiful food, like, palette, and, like, so much variety. I appreciate it so much.
Oh my gosh, yes. I can't wait. Like, when we find the time to go in April, like, it's on the weekend of Good Friday, but it's Laos New Year in New Iberia, Louisiana. And that is one of the biggest, like, Laos New Year festivals. It is a giant ass, like, 20 block party, dude. It is fun. First of all, you can get belligerently drunk if you want to, but you don't have to. I normally go for all the food, so I always run towards the seen Hank, which is like the beef jerky, but it's like a sweetened beef jerky. So yummy. There's also like the papaya salad, which isn't for everyone. Quinn doesn't like the papaya salad. I love the papaya salad. There is also like fruit stalls. So they'll have like unripened mango to make it like tart, and they'll dip it in like fish sauce and sugar. It's actually really good. Like the smell is not for everyone, but it is so damn good.
I love it. And I feel like your culture is very inviting as well. Just the stories you've told about like the new year and like how everybody comes together and how your grandmother is. Like I feel like your culture and your family are very inviting.
I think that's one of the things I love about my culture, because Laos New Year is not closed off to just the Laos community. Mm-hmm. You could be white or black or whatever and come to Laos New Year, and it's a party. It's fun.
I love it. It's like the best thing.
Yeah, we love sharing our culture. Like if you can hang with us, if you can eat our food and drink with us, you're one of us. Like we like to call it Asian by association, but my husband and his best friend Chris went down, and they fucking love Chris. They invited him back the next year, and I was like, he's not even related to us. They're like, we don't care. He's one of us now.
I love it.
Dude, homie got so belligerently drunk, he just puked on the table, and they're like, yeah, why don't you come back next year?
So inviting.
So inviting, but it is really fun. Like, if you ever come over to my family's, like, they're so welcoming. They're like, here, take my bedroom, take these, go to sleep. Like, you can stay here, don't bother paying for a hotel. And
I love it.
I think it's so great, you know, because, like, sometimes I feel like I'm not very in touch with my culture, and you hear me all the time calling myself a banana.
Yes.
Which I'm yellow on the outside and white on the inside. It doesn't matter to them if I'm a banana or not. I am family, and they're like, you are definitely one of us. You're definitely like part of our culture. This is your culture. This is the beauty of it. And I love that. And, you know, at the same time, though, I will proudly call myself a banana, because the reason why I called myself a banana is because it meant that I was loved. And the way that I explain that is that, you know how I said my parents, they weren't really there growing up, right? So I did spend a lot of time with like some of my best friends who, like, they were all white. I mean, I live in the South. There's not many variations here, all right? So growing up, I did have a lot of my friends' moms take me under their wings, and at the same time they were taking care of their kids, they also took care of me, which is like the best thing ever. Like if I was over and they were eating dinner, they would offer me dinner. They would always get me Taco Bell. They would pick me up from school and take me there. So I like, just a handful of moms were there to also take care of me, because I think they knew what was happening, and they're like, doesn't matter now, you're one of our kids. It's fine.
I think that's also like one of the Southern thing is like, most of the time a group of moms have at least, you know, a few kids that aren't their own.
I think that's true, and like I actually am really appreciative about it, because like when you're a little kid and you feel like you're safe with this certain family, with your friends, I think it's very uplifting. It's very like, because if I didn't have them, I don't know where I would be, honestly. Like,
yeah,
Stacy took care of me, which is Morgan's mom. Wpaula took care of me, which is Taylor's mom. Even Carla took care of me. Carla is Bailey's mom, right? So when we went down and we were showing cattle down in Perry, Georgia, we had to show multiple times, and they didn't tell us that, so they had to do laundry. And I was like, well, I don't have money for laundry, and I don't have this and this. And she's like, baby, just give me your clothes and I will wash and I will iron them and I'll do whatever you need. You just let me know.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And that, you know, some people get offended when they get called a banana. I don't get offended, because I was loved, and I was partially raised by white women and then partially raised by my grandmothers and my aunts. And I'm okay with that, because it took a village to raise us. And it meant that I was so dearly loved, and I really appreciate all of those other moms who stepped up and took care of me. Shit, even well into adulthood, like Callie's mom was the one that helped me buy this house.
Yeah.
And like she just did so much stuff, and like, you know, really helped get this house in our hands. Like I just feel like I was very loved and really well taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it shows. I think from your culture and all the people that helped you, you have that inviting, giving spirit as well. Like when I come over, I mean, you cooked and showed all different courses of your culture's meals, and you're a very giving person. So,
oh, thank you. Well, I mean, I try. I do really love to like culturally share food. I'm just like, hey, try this. It's good.
So good. It's very good. I'm very appreciative of our friendship, for sure.
Thank you. Well, do you have any other questions for me?
Yes, one more, I think. So everyone knows we're vet ed. So at what age, and we also love spooky things. So what age do you think that you knew you wanted to do vet ed and also like cryptids and spooky stuff like that?
Ooh, okay. So this is this is so far back in my childhood, but I remember it like it was yesterday. When I was little, I think I lived in this house up until I was like 9 years old. But I had a neighbor named Mr. James. And he was he was a way older man, right? And he was definitely a grandpa. But he was the kindest, gentlest soul I've ever met in my life. Like, he reminded me of Mr. Rogers, right? So one day, me and my sister found this baby bird, and we didn't know what to do with it. And Mr. James came over and told us about the birds, and like he gently placed it in the tree, and he was like, his mama will come back for him. You know, don't listen to when they say like if they smell you on them, they will. You know, he was like, he just put the baby back in the nest, and it was like he'll take care of him, right? And from that moment on, I knew I wanted to be just like him and like help the little animals that I could.
I love that. That's such a sweet story.
It is. And then thus started like my parents were so frustrated because I just kept bringing home these random ass dogs. And they're like, whose fucking dog is this? Go put it back. I would always find their homes because they were running around the neighborhood, but they were so tired of coming home to random ass dogs.
Yeah.
And they're like, go find the owner right now. I don't want to keep it. It was hilarious. But
so funny.
You know, I didn't know the surprising thing about spooky stuff is that I was actually mortally terrified of all spooky things up until I was about 18.
Fair enough.
Because like my family, a lot of people in my family are very spiritual. Like, you know, my dad and my uncle said they saw those ghosts. Well, my aunts have also been able to see spirits and stuff, and so has my mom. And my sister has been able to like see spirits. She saw spirits as a child, but she could like feel, right? And I've just never had that ability. So it scared me that I was walking into the unknown. Like I would walk into a place and not know, but they would know.
Yeah.
And that made me feel really insecure. Right? So all throughout my childhood, I suffered from like sleep paralysis. And that scared the ever-living snot out of me because I would see the same lady over and over again. You know, some people say they see like a man in a hat. I saw this lady in a white dress who would just stand there and fucking scream at me.
Terrifying.
And so, I know. And then so one night, like, I was in high school. I was graduating, right? And I had all these tests coming up. And I had a sleep paralysis again. And, like, you know how you could hear the floor creaking and, like, your footsteps and your heartbeat and stuff? I heard footsteps, but they were soft footsteps. It wasn't, like, walking on hard floor. My bedroom door was open. And the thing that scared me was, like, hold the fuck on. I know, like, people quote-unquote hear footsteps in their sleep paralysis dreams because, like, it's their heart beating, but it shouldn't be softened because, like, my house had carpet on the stairs. So I was hearing that, and I knew which step they were on because, like, there were certain steps on the stairs that I knew creaked.
Yeah.
And they were hitting every one of those. And I was like, hold the fuck on, that's not my heartbeat. Right? And so there she was again. And she came into the corner of my room and screamed. And I was just so frustrated that I screamed back. I was like, oh my God, just fuck off. I don't have time for this. Fucking leave. And then, like, that was the last time I had the sleep paralysis.
You saved it, man.
I think I did, but at the same time now, like, I feel like if I see something, I'm just gonna be like, I don't have time for this shit. Like, I really don't.
Yeah, no.
Like, my house could be haunted right now, and I would just blame it on my cats, and then, like, the ghost would just be like, well, I did that. I'd be like, you know what, you little kitty, you so bad. Why'd you do that? Why'd you break that glass? I would just blame it on the cats constantly. But I really got into podcasting because, like, you know, I had this fascination with it, and it's something that I want to talk about, and I just think it's really fun to research and look into it because every culture has, like, their different myths, their different legends, and their different lores. And instead of looking in culture, I like to look at their monsters because you do learn certain things from it. Like, from the Lao'd monsters that we just talked about, like, you learn that their beliefs heavily rely on reincarnation and the sins of their past lives and stuff. When we went over the Native American lores and things, they didn't heavily rely on reincarnation, but they heavily relied on the values that helped them survive. So just like with the Wendigo, if you were greedy, if you were this and that, you turn into a monster, which is essentially true. Because if you're any of those things, you are the monster. You're bringing your community down. I think looking at the monsters from every culture tells you a lot about them. Don't show me your light, show me your dark side, because I can learn a lot from that.
I agree. I love that.
All right, so was that your last question?
I think so, unless you have any just information that we've missed that you think is really important.
Any information that I've missed. If you go to Laos New Year and they offer you a shot of Hennessy, it is considered disrespectful, so take that shot of Hennessy, and if you don't want Hennessy, you better run away really, really fast because they will give you Hennessy until you puke your guts out.
Oh, gosh.
That's my husband and his best friend have learned, so. Also, wear sunscreen. You will get burnt in Louisiana. 100%.
Yes.
All right, guys. Well, that's it for this episode today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you like more content like this and like what we put out, just please like, follow, and subscribe. We do have a merch shop. It is Courtney's bedtime. She's getting very sleepy. But I will say we will do an episode like this with Courtney sometime in the future whenever she's ready. She obviously is a white woman, but she grew up. What kind of Christian did you grow up?
Non-denominational.
I don't even know what denominations are.
I was none of them.
Great. So we're going to go into that and go over like the lores in the Bible and stuff, which honestly, like, I might be Buddhist, but I've always had an appreciation for the Bible and every metaphor in there, and also the stories, especially the one about Moses, like, you know, the movie The King of Egypt. That movie was busted. It was so good. But thank you so much for listening. We'll be back in the next episode in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.